Hello, hello, hello. We are back for another edition of the Pay Practitioners panel, where we are greeted by several compensation consultants and several compensation practitioners, where every 2 weeks we get together and discuss something related to compensation. It is an unrehearsed, though I won't say unprepared, conversation where there are no scripts, but really we just spend about an hour or so talking about all things compensation. This week, we're going to talk about how is AI impacting the compensation function. And really, I want to dive into a little bit how we're seeing our clients use it, how we're using it ourselves, um, and what do we need to be aware of when we are using these things. So, what I'll do real quick before we get started, we'll go around the room and just introduce ourselves in case this is your first Paid Practitioners panel. My name is Justin. I am the founder of CompTool. I've been in compensation for about 15 years. And so I'll go ahead and pass it off to Catherine.
Hi everyone, Catherine Gombos. I am founder and managing director of Gombos Group, and I too have been in compensation for about 15 years. I'll pass it over to Kat.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. My name is Kat Carlo, and I have been in the compensation space as well as total rewards for about 25 years now, and currently on sabbatical, but certainly, embedding myself in a lot of AI learning and connecting within my network and just really soaking in a lot of the, new journey that our HR and organizations are going down based on all that AI is introducing to all of our roles and our jobs. And I'll pass it over to James.
To who? You said James?
Oh, sorry, Jason. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Oh my gosh.
I don't know if you meant Jack
Friday,
or
isn't it?
Jason.
Here we go.
Yeah, I'm Jason Smith. I've been in compensation for 20 years in a ton of industries. I'm currently a principal consultant with Gallagher. I've been here for the last 2.5 years, and I'm based in Columbia, South Carolina.
And hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Romanishin. I've been in compensation since the last millennia, so a really long time, my entire career. I work for Syndio. We're a software company that helps with pay equity, pay transparency, and making pay decisions. And I'll hand it over to Ja.
Hey everyone. Well, I'm not going to say how many years I've been in the comm space because it seems I'm the freshman here. So I'm going to keep it short. But I did wear different hats, just like a lot of people in this call. I started from consulting and two of the big HR consulting companies. Then I moved in-house in the tech space. And in the past 2 or 3 months, I've been focusing on launching my own business, which is, as you can write from my subheader, community for to rewards people I want to build and also buy with AI.
Very cool. Very cool. No, we're excited to hear about that today. Well, great. Well, I think the first thing I would start off with today is we kind of start about that compensation or AI and compensation is everybody using it today? Is there anybody not using it on this panel? Anyone? So show of hands. I'm using it. I use it a lot. Okay.
Guilty.
All right. So it sounds like we have 100% usage of AI in compensation, which I think we'll continue to see that be the trend as we go forward. It is a fantastic tool. So I'm curious, what is the best use of it, or the most useful thing that you have found for it today? Any big time savers or anything that's been like a real surprise for anybody in terms of being able to throw something into an LLM pretty quickly? Nancy, I see you nodding your head. How are you using it?
Well, I mean, so AI is at the heart of, like, we're in the software industry, so it's transformed sort of everything for us operationally, what we're doing. So it's been extraordinary, like how quickly we're able to develop things now, and it's really at the center of what we're working with our customers in terms of using it. And I'm sure, Justin, you have had exactly, sort of the same experience, being in software,
Yeah.
for sure. Personally, I can say it's definitely helped with, in terms of just being able to bring together so much information so much more quickly. And then it just being sort of like an assistant in that sense of helping me personally, pull together just content and share information much more quickly, but also just kind of amass information and insights in a way that I haven't been able to before across, we all use so many different systems. So it's extraordinary, like how quickly it's just able to, I can pull things from different systems and just interrogate insights. And then, and just whether it's producing materials like decks or videos or just content that I can share back with people.
Mhm.
That's been amazing. It's, but it's even sort of anticipating and thinking of, just the creativity. It's been a real creative partner for me in terms of a thought partner and somebody I can be working with. So I work across a variety of different systems, but I can say it's definitely it's done a lot of that for me. For our business, it's been, like I said, it's been an incredible production tool, and it's changed the way we do things and develop things for sure. But it's also been about how do we bring that right to as a reality to our customers. And that's just been being able to say, boy, in a perfect world, you'd have all these different things that you can reference at once to make the right pay decision. So how do we do that? And that's really the heart of where we're headed with a lot of our customers.
That's fantastic. Anybody? Jason, what about yourself?
I'm pretty light with AI. I mean, I do use it a good bit as kind of like Nancy said, a thought companion to bounce things off of that I'm thinking about and trying to put on paper. Haven't really gotten to the level where I'm like dumping an entire spreadsheet or like a census file into it. We've got our own Gallagher branded AI that we have to use. We can use Copilot too, but that's about it. But yeah, I mean, it's been super helpful with the job architecture stuff that I've been working on to really kind of, now it can, ingest a job description and kind of give me its best take on, whether or not it's, fully a director or fully a VP, things like that I'm on the fence with sometimes. And I use it as kind of a tiebreaker for me.
Yeah.
So, but I don't lean on it too much right now. I will in the future for sure.
You remind me of one of the things that we had a client ask us to help them price a job, and then written the description, and they shared a couple of descriptions from the survey companies. I kind of read through it, and I was like, well, I don't think I really understand any of this. Like the description was a little bit high level, and then the survey descriptions were also high level. And it was in an industry and a role that I had not worked in previously. And what do you say that one of those, like kind of a thought partner, one of the things that helped me do was I plugged in the salary survey description into an AI and said, can you break this down in more simple language and give me a few examples of where I might see this kind of role? And I found it was a really effective way to reword something in a more tangible, kind of easier to understand and way. So it sounds like you're doing a little bit of that as well for some tie breaking and kind of helping to some lightweight work with it.
Well, I mean, for the last 2 years, I don't think that there's such a thing as a job description written by a human. I'm pretty sure that like every job description that exists today has been written by AI at some point. But I think that's a miss too. I think, you can't just take what it gives you, right? You've got
breaks my heart.
to validate. Yeah.
No, it's no. I mean, I've written over. I joke, but it's the truth. I mean, I've written over 1,000 job descriptions. I used to, in my past life at WTW, I used to lead massive job documentation projects, and I was always looking for ways to streamline and almost automate it. Like sometimes I would set up our job descriptions in Excel, and I would use Excel to like have, okay, this is a manager of people, then it's going to automatically, we're going to insert this information. And I've done like in the past, I mean, again, long ago, using mail merge and trying to like automate as much of the process. And yet, but to your point, Jason, you still need sort of the human touch to review it. Does it make sense? Is it hitting on all the different points? One of my favorite things, though, to your point, Justin, is I love in a prompt, act like an expert in X, right? And but explain it to me and then asking it and then saying, and explain to me as if I am an 8-year-old, or explain or take this concept, break it down. And then I like to use analogies a lot when when I'm using it for that purpose, which is, explain to me what are the top things that I have a custom GPT that I've talked about it, my Total Rewards custom GPT that I like to go to break down concepts that I know I have taught it what it, all the different typical compensation concepts, but then I'll say, explain to me the top 3 things Total Rewards is worried about, but pretend that you're talking to a class of 10-year-olds and use Minecraft as your analogy and break it down in that way. And it's like, it just challenges me to unjargon comp speak so that way it helps me be more plain spoken and unlearn a lot of the things that after over 30 years in this space, I keep saying. So it's like, it helps me build get out of my muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
And learn a normal way of explaining the thing.
I think it's quite common, right? Just to chime in there, writing is primarily the first use case you think about AI, and that's probably due to us using chatbots. Like most of us are still at that chatbot era.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some research just came out today, which I found extremely revealing, that actually this long use of LLMs can actually reduce can dampen your individuality. There's research that just came out that shows that it is doing this opposite of bolstering creativity. And I find it in my day-to-day. I sometimes speak live on a call, and then I realize like that sounds so AI. I've just used the same patterns that I see over and over again, where I say, "Hey, I know that's as AI writing," and like subconsciously, I'm doing it myself because we're all reading a lot of AI written posts out there. It is almost dampening our individuality, and it's not just impacting how we write; it's impacting how we think. Again, this is not me saying it; it's the research that just came out. So there's this ongoing standardization of how people write, but also how people speak, how people think. And despite how big of a proponent I am when it comes to AI, I mean, just read my subheader, right? Wouldn't be building a community. I'm also aware of the side effects that we may want to, dampen. It's funny because I think in near future, we might get a request from a client if you're in consulting, and we might say, you know what, it's the 7th time that Anthropic is down this week, and I cannot get the work done because I forgot how to do it manually. I honestly I wonder if one day that will be an accepted excuse to push back in that line. I joke about it, but honestly, I wouldn't bet 100% that's not going to happen.
I think it's like, though, any other type of, I think it's an excellent observation. I have seen it too in sort of my Slacks back and forth. Like sometimes somebody will ask me a question and I'll respond and they'll be like, would you like me to do da-da-da? I'm like, oh my God, I sound like ChatGPT. Like, would you like me to do this? I totally agree. But I also think it's similar to, it's a great reminder that anything that you ingest as a human being, right, is going to change sort of the way, how you communicate, how you interact. So like, I love to read. And one of the things I think helps, to your point, great writing comes from great reading, right? We know that that's something we've long done. So I think making sure that you have that variety of what you're bringing in, I totally appreciate you calling that out, Jack. And then, but I think it's similar to the way that we were taught as consultants long ago about how to speak, how to present ourselves, how to, in consulting, it used to be you should be professional, like dress professionally and forgettably. I remember those were 2 components of being at least very old Towers Perrin. That was part of it, was, we had almost like a uniform. And it was just, don't stand out, just be very beige, right? So that way you're holding up your client and you are not standing out, but you're talking the talk. So in a sense, right, I see sort of a similar thing, but to your point, I think it also means in the AI era, we have to sort of elevate individuality. That's going to become much more valuable, and authenticity and trust, making like those are things that I think are going to really rise to the surface. The humanity is going to be much more valued because, to your point, AI is going to automate a lot and make a lot repeatable, and it'll have less value as a result.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and we may have talked about this before. There's so many pros with AI, which is, really changing the way we conduct ourselves, conduct business, measure our business, our ROI, and it's moving at an unprecedented pace. I have seen over the last year just how it is being engaged and how it is being talked about by our C-suite executives, by our board, and there are just so many pros and cons. Some of the pros, obviously, is the effectiveness of getting work done a lot quicker, automating a lot of these processes, removing obstacles to get responses and to be a lot more creative. And the there are so many cons, and I may have shared this with Jacques recently. I said I just have so many concerns as I continue to embed myself and test the quantitative capabilities of the different AI tools that exist today. And, I'm testing, is it fair? Is it thinking fairly? Is it thinking in a compliant fashion? Is it bringing in the humanity? How authentic is it? And the other, con that I'm really just starting to see is the gap between how the C-suite and board are thinking about AI versus what's going on down below a few levels across their entire organization, not just HR. So I'm going to speak a little bit more broadly. And the way that they're thinking about it is get it to the agentic space, get it to really anticipate and get not just automation, but just get it to the space that it anticipates. And humans are still the ones doing that piece. Very few companies and spaces are doing the agentic thinking for tapping on your shoulder rather than using it, leveraging it and asking questions. So we're in the space of generative AI rather than that agentic space, and that is a tremendous gap that exists between the executive and what they're thinking about and what their expectations are in terms of the results that you're bringing to the table versus where everyone is still in that learning space, still in that testing space, engaging AI in a very generative fashion. And there's that gap. We have to figure out how to really narrow that and be really transparent about the journey that we are going into with AI and where we are within the space within the organization so that executives understand just exactly how it is being implemented. So it does take time to get there, especially when it comes to governance and really being very thoughtful across the board when it comes to compliance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on that compliance note too, there's a question in the chat. There's actually a couple of really good questions in the chat. There is Lucas Grindle. There we go. How are we leveraging AI for addressing legal considerations? And I find this to be a really interesting question because while it seems like legal review would be a tremendously effective, AI would be tremendously effective with legal review. Legal review is review of written words and codes. There is black and white, and there is lots of gray. But I would say from our perspective, we are still relying heavily on our attorney and our counsel. That being said, I do think that it is speeding up and expediting the process which that is happening. One of the most recent examples I can think of is as it relates to FLSA evaluations. So running a job description through an LLM, asking for its consideration on if the job would be exempt or non-exempt. But in addition to that, you can also ask it, the different thresholds for are different pay requirements for different locations. So Washington State has a different pay requirement than Texas, for example. So while I still think you need to have that backstop of a person reviewing it, I do think it really helps to prompt or helps to understand and expedite the process for those reviews. I'm wondering if anybody else is using. I think Syndio or yeah, well,
We have a whole compliance sort of foundation, and part of it, it was interesting. Um, we initially, before we built an in-house expertise on demand. So it's this combination of building out sort of questions and answers to assist with pay reporting requirements across multiple jurisdictions, as a lot of or sort of all those related issues. And it was funny because initially when we were building it, we thought, well, let's just see, if we Google and, just like, what if we just pull, and ask it let's just see what we get. And, it was amazing. It was right 50% of the time. So, which is, obviously not acceptable. So we ended up, so to, all of Kat's point around, you have to be able to trust, you need to build things responsibly, and especially when it comes to legal, and even discerning, this is something that I can tell you is, factually correct. And then this part that you're asking, you really need to consult legal counsel, because that is an opinion or it's a legal advice. We can't provide that. So yeah, so those types of things, there's so much more that goes into ensuring the accuracy of it, especially if it's coming down to we're meeting compliance needs. So we can't mess around. We have to be able to trust it. And that's where I say, I think a lot of that is coming into play. But to your point, Justin, right? Like, I mean, so I happen to be married to a lawyer. He's a judge now. So I remember the day, he'll tell me about, all the way as a law clerk, you used to pull how tedious it was, right? Pulling cases, pulling those types of things. And then you had things like LexisNexis where like, oh, I can search it, it'll search it for me. Now we know the cases of, we see again and again these examples of, someone's writing something and they're citing a case that actually didn't exist. It was hallucinated. So, those are the dangers now. There's this whole other layer. The other thing is he happens to be a criminal judge. So now when it comes to evidence, when it, certain like photographic evidence, there's this whole other layer of understanding, is that real? Is it not? Is that video real? Was it tampered with in any way? So, there's this opportunity to be able to generate things really quickly, but on the same time, there's this need to verify. And so that's where I do think we're going to have the same issues. I know for us, I don't know what your experiences have been, especially like Catherine and Jason, you folks in consulting. And I mean, even you, Justin, with when it comes to compliance teams, like AI and compliance, I feel like a lot of that is still forming for many companies. They're still figuring it out and building out those teams. So when we are working with customers who are considering, say, using our software, that whole element is, it really kind of depends on, who you're talking to and who needs to be brought in and what questions they're asking. So yeah, Justin, like we've put out like, these are the questions you should ask about, any type of tool that you're using and, those types of things, because there's this netting together of like, it's whether it's data security, it's compliance, it's all of, what role is AI playing? What role do you not want it to play? What's based on math and calculation? What is deterministic versus probabilistic? Those are really important questions to ask when you're talking about, say, for instance, compensation and the work that we're doing, right? It's really critical to just be careful. And then the whole security element of it, I think I read in the chat, like, yeah, don't throw a spreadsheet of information, out there. You don't know where it is.
Right.
There's the question of metadata. There's all these different questions. So you just have to be, careful. But at the same time, the ship is going, like, jump in there. So, start using it because or use it more robustly. Like think about more creative ways you can use it because
Yeah.
it can produce amazing things.
Yeah, on that point of being careful and inquisitive,
Mhm.
I, and I agree with all of that. There's one thing I've noticed as I speak with more and more people that are, just intrigued and interested in learning more about how to adopt AI. There's almost like a expectation mismatch. We're all hyped because we have this new capability and it feels great the first week. But if you were hiring the best, graduate from university, someone that studied, like knows all the HR books by heart, their IQ is off the charts, right? Would you expect them to be able to do, pay equity analysis from start to finish, identifying pay outliers, coming up with remediating actions without you not even having to review the work? Like that's the right comparison. You wouldn't, right? You would definitely say this guy's new in my team, so I better make sure I hire the right person. We'll see now on the job if he's delivering or just as cool because there's a big gap between theory and practice. And the same goes with AI. Like, people dump things in there and say, "Oh, like he's gonna take care of it," especially if it's a chatbot. Well, you know what? That's a generic LLM that wasn't built for the specific purpose that you are, tasking it with. You have to train it. There are many ways to do it. I'll give you two that are very practical if you're using Claude. I'll tell you the way I do it. First, you can use Claude Skills. What Claude Skills are nothing but reusable instructions, specialized, packaged precisely for the task. So, for instance, I know there's the HR plugin, you might have heard about that, but I created my own compensation consultant skill, which is essentially I've taught it everything I know so far and how to do market pricing, how I benchmark roles. Your approach might be different, but I'm doing it my way. And it's still, even with these specific instructions that I keep on, improving, it still sometimes get things wrong. At the
Mhm.
beginning, it was, complete out of whack 50% of the time. Now it's getting close to 70%. But there's another strategy, another tactic that a lot of people miss, which is about continuous improvement. Just because you give it a set of skills and you don't have to invoke these skills over and over again, which is a massive boost, by the way, because having to repeat yourself creates friction. But now you don't have to repeat yourself, but great. But every time before I end a session with any LLM, what I typically do is I ask it to reflect on what happened during this session, reflect best practices, and learn. So next time I use it, I don't have to repeat myself. And I found this trick. It is one sentence. I have to say all the time at the end of the session. I find it to give it a really good boost in terms of the quality of the exercise. But again, it has to be specific. So in this case, I was doing market pricing, and that's the expectation misgap. The fact that you dump something in a generic LLM and boom, you get a answer is 100% sure, like true every time. But it's not how it works. Just like learning, it takes time, ups and downs, hype and then fatigue, desperation, then happiness. Like it's just like a child would learn, is the exact same process.
Yeah, and Jack, that governance first framework, it's, I believe, really foundationally critical to any journey you take with AI, whether it is that learning phase, whether it is the, leveraging the quantitative abilities of whatever tool you are using, that keeping in mind, the data protection, what you're sharing, how you are using it, the executive alignment to how you are leveraging these tools, and ownership structure, right? Who owns this at the end of the day? Where does this really belong? What happens when faults start to pop up, right? How do you audit appropriately for this? So I do believe foundationally that governance first framework is really critical in this instance.
I have to say, I'm really excited about how we're having this conversation today because I have to say, coming in, I a little hesitant and worried that we would get all about the hype, but this conversation would be all about how exciting and what the future of AI could be. And I'm really appreciating the wisdom that is shared here around caution, around the awareness of how it impacts who we are, not just how we do work. And recognizing that, what we see in kind of the mass media and even social media may or may not be true, again, sort of impacting who we are, how we think. But that thinking about this as something that is a tool that we will continue to shape. And that it is an iterative process with AI, right? It's not a dump it and get it back and move on to the next thing, right? This is going to be not just in our day to day, but over time, a very iterative experiment.
And I think one of the really like when we talk about that being iterative, and you can kind of jump in with tempering your expectations, I think I kind of want to try to force a segue over to one of the questions that came into the chat around how are we using AI for automations and dashboards. Because I think when we think about how, if I want to get started using AI and it's beyond writing a job description, what are the ways that I can do that? And obviously everything I will say is, I would first say we need to be mindful where our data goes. It should not be leaving, your secure network, check with your security compliance team, such and such and such and such. But with that out of the way, one of the things that I have seen that can be, a really effective tool is leveraging AI to analyze data and to creating dashboards for you. I'm a very curious person. I really enjoy just understanding, how can we use these new tools that are out there. And so my background is in public administration. So I have a background in understanding city government, and there's a connection between city government and government data. And so one of the things I did to play with was city-stats.com. And it's just a vibe-coded thing to play with. But one of the things I found that's really interesting is just an example of what you can do with a large volume of data is it has an interactive tool where you can simply, plug in what kind of city you want to live in, and it will narrow down and map all the different cities, kind of creating this interactive dashboard. Or there's another one where you can kind of choose, if you want to see correlations between median rent and education. And what's been really fascinating to me is it's not related to anything that I do professionally, but it's been just a really fantastic way to see how can you start to play with that data that's available to you, how can you start to create these dashboards and take observations from them that you're then validating. And I know, Jack, I want to ask you too about range and what you've been working on too, because I think I'm guessing there's a lot of, as with comp, there's lots of data, lots of information that we can analyze and try to pull insights from. So I would love to hear a little more about what you've been working on.
So there's so first, I'm really pleased that you mentioned one of the benefits of using AI, extrapolating value and insights. And you mentioned specifically using dashboards and all of that, because one of the first things that I hear over and over again when it comes to AI is, I want to save time, and it's all about time savings. Well, it is definitely can save you time. Probably saves me 10 hours a week, I would say. And I explain how. But what I've noticed the most is that it's not just saving me time. It is spotting trends, insights, extrapolating value from not just data, but conversations, things that I completely would have never thought of. And then when I read it, gosh, it's true. It's precisely what I would have thought if I had a second brain. So that is pretty much, the value add. To me, the biggest value in using AI, and this is not comp specific, we can get to comp specific stuff in a second, is using model context protocols, MCPs. If you don't know what MCP is, in a few words, it basically allows your AI model to connect seamlessly to other tools, external data sources, tools, and softwares, and it removes friction. That continuous switching you're doing from PowerPoint to Excel to Outlook, if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, or from Gmail to Calendar to Google Sheets, that completely goes away. We don't realize how much time, energy, I would say, consuming that continuous switching is, how much friction it creates. Right now, all I have is one interface, and that's about it. I hardly ever have more than two windows open in my screen. Probably if I went for a larger screen, I'll have three. To be honest with you, I'm working on that. But that's probably where I see AI really making an impact in any function, not just compensation. Now, if we look at specific use cases, there's a very interesting pictures. We launched the community. We announced it just 2 days ago. In the first 24 hours, we received 80 plus applications. I haven't reviewed all the applications. I'm doing it, it's just me. When we say we, it's just me and AI. But there are a few things that came across. We asked applicants, what are you working on right now? And despite most of them saying, I'm at that chatbot ceiling, I'm unable to get beyond that, the ones that are actually building, they're building things that I wasn't really expecting. So there's a few people in the applications already mentioned automating market pricing, pulling multiple sources inside a model and automating the range building, which I think it's in hindsight doesn't surprise me, but it does at the same time, because I was expecting people to try to start from the simple things, polishing up job descriptions and all of that. But people are almost jumping onto the next steps. And we're not talking about a small amount of people. There are at least 20 people out of 80. And I reviewed these findings. It was 4 p.m. yesterday. So maybe today we had a few more applications coming in. Maybe the results have changed, but at least 20 people have said they built an in-house market pricing automation tool that reduces that friction, having to look up Bradford, Mercer, WW, and other sources. Instead, they just pull it all into one machine and they review the output. But yes, they have to teach it how to do job matching first, right? So I found that fascinating. And I think it's one of those use cases that we'll see more and more, because if you think about it, if you look at your workflows, benchmarking is probably the one that you interact with the business the least, compared to merit cycles and things that have a instant almost impact, the right impact on people's pay. Benchmarking is more like a secluded activity that's we feel like it's more hours. We're more independent when it comes to benchmarking. We don't need to reach out to the business that often. So unsurprisingly, I think that's where a lot of people are starting with. And I'm just baffled that 20 people out of 80 have already built an in-house tool. Where that works, I'll ask them, and I want to see it, of course. But I built my prototype. It's just a prototype. It's not a SaaS-ready tool to be rolled out through the enterprise. There's no DPIA. There's no SOC2 certification. It's just a prototype that I can use for my work. Yeah, that is fascinating. The fact that market pricing is top of the list right now in terms of use cases.
Well, it's so time consuming, I think, for so many, right? And to your point, I think it's about efficiencies, a lot of the efficiency plays. I know for me, what's been fun is creating something and even working with the AI to say, what would you do to improve this? Or how can I, or even saying, I don't really know what I want to create. Help me figure it out and act like an expert in maybe this field to help me figure it out. But doing that sort of proof of concept kind of building. So to your point, Justin, whether it's a dashboard, I've done, I was working on something and it was actually, as I was kind of having the conversation, trying to build the thing, it was making suggestions to me and suggesting what, it literally creating a dashboard where oh, I didn't even think to put that on there. That's really, that's amazing. Do more of that, so I do enjoy that, just really opening. I feel like a lot of times I think the challenge is thinking bigger is what I always think about.
Yes.
What are the things I'm not asking and how do I think bigger? How do I take it? I know how I would getting past, I think, Jack, you're even nailing it, right? Getting past sort of this, how to do the things I've always done to what is just a whole new way of doing a thing, right? That's really, I think, experimenting, like getting to that place, I think it's there's an opportunity for all of us to rethink what we're doing, and and actually thinking with the end in mind. In an ideal world, what is the experience I would want people to have with compensation? And so, what would potentially be an experience that, if I break it down, what would I need to get there? Is that, to me, is really exciting, thinking about it that way versus thinking in the way that we've always thought of in terms of building up from, well, I have to do the job descriptions so I can evaluate the jobs, so I can do the job architecture, so I can market price them and create salary structures. Maybe it's, God bless you, maybe we should think differently and kind of back into it.
I really like your nod towards the experience, because I think that is sort of the center of kind of people at work, right? What is that employee experience? And a lot of the ways that I think are pretty fun to think about, what are the dashboards, what are the reports, what are the things that we need to be showing, come from conversations, come from questions that come along the journey in the year with compensation, with HR, thinking about your employee relations cases. Where are managers struggling? Putting themes in to an AI tool to say, what are the things that we need to focus on developing? And are there dashboards? Are there reports? Are there things that can help folks start to get visibility into the questions they already have or the challenges they already have? And then using AI too to kind of give use cases and quick, half-hour lunch and learns around, like, here are the 4 or 5 tough questions that come from your high performers that didn't like their raise. I know you prepared for the low performer, right? Things like that are kind of fun ways of taking in what that experience is on the day-to-day, and using your role in comp in partnership with HR and business leaders to help kind of move the needle on that employee experience.
Yeah. And ultimately, I mean, that's the whole point of adopting AI. I think we are focusing on productivity, right? How can I become a more productive version of myself? And we're focusing on the impact this has on the operating model, our own operating model. I mean, that's quite obvious. But what I really hope for, what I really think AI gives us, is an opportunity to change how Total Rewards is perceived by the business. It is one of the reasons why I actually left in-house, like the corporate work. I was more often not asked to be this compliance police, a role that other people can play very well. I'm not quite good at it, just because maybe I'm just too creative, I want to do cool stuff. I'm not good at saying no. I want to have a vision, right? And there's nothing wrong with being compliant. Don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of people in rewards that want to be seen more as a change maker rather than someone that is gatekeeping and keeping everything compliant. And it's very, very. It's not that people don't want it. I think most of us want to be, a promoter of change. But the perception that we have is that we are the person you go to when there's a problem, and you're the person you go to when a manager needs to run a process it's not what they signed up. Like, they signed to work in product, they signed up to work in design, but hey, they happen to be a people manager, so they have to do performance reviews, they have to do pay reviews. There's always like this negative connotation of doing work in rewards. They come to us with a problem, right? Well, if we are able to show them, here's where AI comes in as an enabler, not as a protagonist. If we're able to show them that we can build tools that can help them get this work done, not just faster, but in a more, just valuable way for its employees, for the company, that's when the perception of rewards and HR more broadly will change. But people need to see something concrete first. And thanks to AI now, the barriers to building something have come down. That was the bottleneck until 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
But the new bottleneck is, do you trust what you've built? That is really what takes you from that first 30 minutes when you build a tool and you're like, oh, wow, it works. Yeah, I was able. But then when are you able to actually, be confident, say, here you are, 1,000 managers in the company, take it and make it yours. That is the real bottleneck we need to work on right now to become those change makers.
But I think it also changes. So I love how this conversation's coming down to how it's all these different changes, right? The changes of behaviors, and it changes the way we work with people. So one of the things I've been thinking about is how we're no longer designing rewards, for employees. We're designing with them. There's much more co-creation with pay transparency because they have a much bigger voice now. They know a lot more than they ever did, quite honestly, about rewards because of pay transparency. And so when I think about, Jack, what you're saying, when it comes to building, say, these tools and these systems, there is this element of we used to build things in a way that it had to be exactly right, and I think there's this opportunity to not be perfect and to say this is more of a system. So we're going to continue to get better and better at it, but we need more information. We're going to be faster, but it is going to be iterative. And I do think there's room for rewards to be kind of iterative. I think it's going to happen to us, honestly, whether we like it or not, because I think AI is transforming jobs. There are certain industries like mine, right, like Justin's, that are very rapidly transforming as a result. I think you're going to continue to see that as people adopt AI. And we, as total rewards professionals, know jobs, we own the jobs. So we're like right in the middle of that transformation of how the jobs are going to change, how we're going to value them. What are those implications from a workforce design standpoint? But I think it's going to be sort of this iterative process. It's not going to be the, I write the job, I price the job, and like, boop, we're done. It is going to be we're going to have to create some structure around it, but it's got to be a nimble structure, something that we can continue to sort of iterate on and invite feedback on. So I don't know, I think it's going to change maybe the cadence with which we do things. It will be a much more ongoing thing. And maybe it's not about the market data changing so much as it is about the job itself changing and how we value the job. And so we're like, I do see a world in which we're going to be, it's a good thing those market pricing tools, people are building them, because I do think, and Justin, I don't know if you're already seeing this, right? There's going to be like more hybrid jobs. We would always call them, right? Like hybrid. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I think we're going to see a lot more of that sort of blending, depending on what a particular company values. So maybe, Jack, to your point, right? Like I have somebody who's doing this work, but now they're using AI to like augment their communications. And so they're able to do that. But then I have another company where no, we're really focused on the communications, and this stuff over here, some of this analysis isn't as important. So we can use the AI to kind of automate more of that. Like I think there's going to be some blending going on.
What I love about what you just said there, Nancy, is that, kind of the root of our work in comp and total rewards is understanding the job and the market value of it, right? And I think what AI is going to help us move towards is really understanding the people at work and the workforce planning strategy around it. And so I sort of see us kind of being more intentional around, again, that employee experience and how we can use all of total rewards, not just comp and benefits, but recognition and well-being and career development to help move businesses forward.
Well, I think as we're kind of continuing to talk about how does like the comp team like start to get into AI and building those tools and building the problems. One of the things I would recommend to folks is, find that dummy data set. Maybe you're using BLS data. Maybe you're using data from public sector information where that data is, it's not private. And then creating tools that potentially, are housed on your own internal machine rather than trying to create like a SaaS product or an online product where there's a lot of different kinds of security concerns, compliance concerns, data leaving kind of your ecosystem without you wanting it to. But I would say if you can find that dummy data, find a problem that you had. It could be any kind of problem, and see if you have a way to start solving that. And you can ask, Claude, for example. Claude the AI, not Claude my neighbor. You can ask them or ask the tool, this is the problem I have. This is the data that I have. What suggestions would you make? And then push back. See if it gives you a different suggestion. Tell it how you want it to work. Tell it the security concerns that you might have or the compliance structure that you have to work within. And my guess is it will give you a good start and a great introduction into creating tools that may help yourself solve issues that you're having that are taking a long time the way you're doing them today.
That's right. And Justin, you touched upon data, which is, a critical factor of how you leverage AI and how often you update that data, right? Data should not just be at one point in time that you clean up. This is a project that we do. Data should be an ongoing discipline, right? Where you are ensuring that data is clean, that we are reflecting the change in the job descriptions, that we are, consistently applying the changes to the jobs across the organization and reflecting that in a timely fashion in our AI tools so that it moves and evolves along with the organization and with the organization business goals. So just really engaging that, it really shouldn't be a project one point in time. It really is an ongoing relationship. And it really is going to lean very hard on that clean data, on that accuracy of your job descriptions. And more importantly, and I love one of the comments here that their CIO made a comment that AI is not vertical, it is horizontal. You are absolutely right. That internal organizational alignment is so critical because the way one area of the organization leverages AI, if it differs incredibly from how others are leveraging AI, then you are creating noise that will bubble up within a very short time frame. And then it creates that distrust of what you're trying to accomplish, whether based on the results that you're chasing. We should all be aligning strategically as to what our intent is and what results we are expecting from these very capable systems. So very well said. And just remember, whatever you get better decisions from better data, from better inputs, garbage in, garbage out. But if you are a bit afraid or hesitant to engage with real data, highly encourage everyone to use, to Justin's point, just data that you gather from elsewhere and just really understand what it does, what the outputs that allows you to do, because it does give you a tremendous power to create dashboards that are relevant to your organization and to what you're trying to accomplish. And they're really very visually powerful. They tell a great story. There's a lot of intelligence there that is laid over that narrative that will certainly bring together a much more powerful dashboard that you can, present with a lot more context. But at the end of the day, auditing that data, really understanding that process, and to Jack's earlier point, just really testing and make sure that it is understanding what you're trying to accomplish at the end of the day.
Yeah. One of the always going back to this, aggregate findings, the public cloud and the applications as they come in. One of the key, almost like things that people moan about is enterprise system limitations. They're locked in Microsoft stack or Google stack, and they've heard of a few people ditching ChatGPT for Claude, but hey, you know what? IT won't approve Claude, nor will procurement. Reward, just a team of 2 to 5, maybe 10 people. You're just a drop in the ocean. Why would they waste time with you when there's marketing and sales that can have a tangible impact on revenue asking for similar tools? It's a very hard, place to be. You get a lot of objections. But to your point, you don't have to wait for the perfect conditions where Microsoft and Google will have released agentic platforms that are similar to Claude. They are, by the way, doing it. Microsoft released Copilot Cowork built on Anthropic. They made a big fuss out of it, then you realize there's no documentation whatsoever. I've looked into it. They're just piloting it with a group of people. No one knows who they are. But eventually it will come. So like this problem is going to go away. But there's no need for you to wait that long if you're really keen on getting started and upskilling and finding out. If you have that growth mindset, that inquisitive mindset, curiosity, all of that, you can get some dummy data. You can also ask AI to generate the dummy data for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's right. I mean, okay, maybe it's not going to look realistic, but you can give it data that is 5 years old that was realistic back then and say, you know what, mirror this data, but come up with different numbers, maybe in different currencies. So at that point, like, you're not hurting anyone. And you can start practicing on your own.
That's great. Great. Well,
I have one final question, Justin, if I can jump in.
yeah.
Has anybody named their AI thought partner? You said Claude the neighbor, and I thought, oh, I've got Fred.
Is that your AI partner?
My AI chat, I call him Fred.
Yeah, I have a bunch of different custom GPTs. So I have, but yeah, and then one of them is a Nancy, like a version of the AI version of Nancy, but she needs a little updating. She's a little stale right now. So
Had to ask. Sorry, Justin.
of course, yeah, no, you got.
Great question. Yeah.
Yeah, you have the different. I have a podcast summarizer. I have I tend to call it by what I need it to do for me. So I have different things like that where I can throw a link in and it'll give me different highlights and then or even snippets of what, and then that way I can listen to certain parts of podcasts and yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, mine are mostly. I don't have clever names.
Chatty.
I like
Chatty.
chat.
I like that.
Good one. Yeah, anyway.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for joining us again on a Friday the 13th. Just noticed that. But no, we look forward to seeing everyone in about 2 more weeks on Friday the 27th. So we will look forward to seeing everybody then. And thank you all for spending an hour with us today. And thanks again to Catherine, Kat, Jason, Nancy, and Jacques.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Not
everybody.
James. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Good to see you all.
James, too. Thank James.
Here, guys.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.